Well, happy Friday, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Unspoken Truth. How you doing there, Ed?
I'm living the dream, Robbie. How you doing down there?
I'm really well. It's already the weekend here in the future in Sydney. So Saturday, 5:30 on a Saturday morning. So excited to be doing the final show for the week. But there's been a lot of news overnight, and I'm looking forward to getting into some of that here today. Ladies and gentlemen, if this is your first time here at the Unspoken Truth, welcome. I'm your host, Robert Bruss, and I'm joined by my fabulous co-host, Ed Anderson, over there in Minnesota. We're live every day at 5:30 a.m. Sydney time and 2:30 p.m. Minnesota time. So thank you for dialing in and joining us here for the show. If you've not been here before, we talk about what's going on behind the stories in the news, and we like to pull back the curtain and give you the unspoken truth of what's really going on. So if this is your first time here, you're in for a bit of a treat today because we've got a bunch of different topics that we're going to cover, particularly in a rapid fire format, which is going to give a little bit of tempo to the show as well. We're also available as a podcast over on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So if you can't join us for the show, or you missed the live, or you haven't been able to catch up on your computer, you can always get it on your phone via your favorite podcasting app. We're also available on Twitter and Telegram, and we're going to back up over on Rumble as well. Come on over to the Telegram channel. The link is down below. And we've got a whole bunch of unspoken truth over there that we can't actually talk about here on this platform for a variety of self-censoring reasons. There's a whole bunch of reasons why you can't do that. Ed, I was watching the interview with RFK and Joe Rogan yesterday. Have you seen that at all?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so absolutely fantastic interview, folks. If you haven't seen that, just pop open your Spotify and go and watch RFK over there. But one really interesting thing that he was talking about on there is Joe asked him, have you been on any other shows? Have you been on any other podcasts? Because you've been censored quite a few times and been taken off air. And he said, look, I've been approached by some really big people and I've got relationships with a whole series of podcasters already anyway, just through the work that he actually does. And he was unable to go on those shows and talk about so-called vaccinations because those people were worried about having their show cancelled. So him going on Joe Rogan and being able to unload and unleash a little bit was a really pleasant surprise. And unfortunately, that's the world that we live in. We live in a self-censoring world. Did you get that from RFK when he was talking about it? He was definitely not self-censoring himself on Joe's show there.
Well, no, and it's refreshing to listen to. It's refreshing when you hear people willing to walk up to that electric fence that you keep referring to, and maybe even touching the fence a little bit, here and there. Yeah, and it's a shame that we live in the world that we do.
I don't know what the solution is. Like someone like Joe Rogan is giving him that platform and making it happen, and he's allowed. Why can't he go out there and speak the truth? Why can't he go out there and say what he says? And one really interesting takeaway from that interview, is him saying that nobody in the history of in his history of dealing with vaccinations, and I'm not just talking about COVID or Dr. Fauci, all the stuff that he'd done prior to that, had been willing to debate him on anything that he put out there. And that to me says a whole lot, because the people that were willing to debate him, he told a funny story like, okay, we've got a debate and it'll be you and this guy and you'll get 50-50. And then they call back, it'll be you and two others and you will only get a third of it. It'll be you and three others and you'll only get 10 minutes. It'll be you and four others and you'll only get 6 minutes. So he jumps on a red eye, goes to the other side of the country, rocks up there, standing there, and there's four empty chairs on the stage. And he's like, well, where is everybody? And they just haven't turned up because they don't have any credibility, and they know that this really skillful lawyer is just going to unpick them and demolish them calmly in front of an entire crowd, and their reputations will be destroyed forever. So, but why are people so scared of the truth, Ed?
Well, in that case, he called their bluff, right? I think that was probably a strategy. So we'll keep cutting this time. We'll dilute the stage until he decides it's not worth it. Then he'll bow out, and then they'll target him as a coward. See, he bowed out, but he showed up and he called their bluff, and none of them showed up. Why are they afraid to debate him? It's because they know they can't. They know they don't have an argument. That's the thing with liberals. They don't have arguments other than, if you don't agree with me, you're a racist. That's the extent of their argument. Again, because A lot of politicians rely on ad hominem attacks. They don't feel the need to go deep in making their argument because they know they have losing arguments. You know, they can't make they know their arguments. You know, if someone got on the stage, these eco terrorists, you know, if they had to get on a stage and actually defend why they're throwing soup on paintings, if they had to defend it, they wouldn't get past, oh, well, because it's wrong or because they're bad guys. They can't get past that first argument. After that, they lose everything. So when people don't show up for arguments, or when they cannot make an argument, or when they resort to ad hominem attacks, that should tell you everything you need to know about the depth of their policies.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. Well said. Let's open up the show, and let's have a little looky-loo what we got. So Putin was over in St. Petersburg in the last day. They turned off the mobile phone network over there. There was a whole lot of jamming. There's a whole lot of nefarious FSB type stuff, CIA type stuff going on there to protect him, of course. And I got a couple of little sound bites from some of the things that he said. I'm not going to bore you with the whole lot of it because I've actually sat through it and watched it, and I pulled out the sound bites for you for what he said. And I've got to say, the propaganda on both sides, from the Russian side and from the Ukrainian side, is just freaking out of control.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that, man. Yeah, that's.
I just can't believe, like, I don't know who's whispering in Zelensky's ear or who's whispering in Putin's ear, but I don't know. I'm sitting here as an outsider 10,000 miles away looking at it going, both of you are full of shit. And you're taking us for fools. It's like they deliberately put these morons in charge, and if you believe anything that they say, you just give up all of your self-respect. It's like listening to anything that Scott Morrison said, or Dan Andrews said, or Joe Biden says. If you listen to those people, they're just absolute morons. They're fools, and you're giving away all of your self-respect. So when you hear what he says, and I'll pull out the points for you when I show you that, you'll think, yeah, what an idiot, what a moron, what on earth is he talking about? How can he even prove or validate that?
I'll take the other side of that argument, but go ahead and finish your thought.
No, that was it. Go for it. What were we going to say?
Okay, well, listen, you always have to keep in mind who their audience is when they're talking. A lot of the speeches aren't meant for you, right? So, it's meant for domestic consumption. So we have a different perspective than what Putin has and his audience.
Yeah, well, this is true. This is true. I've got another soundbite, goes for about a minute and a half, with Donald Trump and his reaction to his indictment. If you haven't seen that, it's a pretty forceful video. He says what he means, and he means what he says, I think is the way that he described that properly. And it's pretty interesting when you see it from his perspective. If you put aside your bias and whether or not you like the guy, you think he's good or he's bad, if you just listen to what he's saying, there's a lot of truth behind what it is that he's saying, and he's seeing the unspoken truth in there as well. I've got a funny little video with Bill Gates and Xi Jinping, and you're going to, what's going on there. It's very, very strange. We now know, we've known for a little while that the US Department of Energy, who oversees all of that COVID stuff, has come out and said that COVID probably came from a lab. And there's been some hit pieces in the last couple of days that says, we found patient 0. And guess where patient 0 worked? At the lab.
At Cincinnati, Ohio. At the Dairy Queen. At the Dairy Queen in Cincinnati, Ohio. Yeah.
Kyiv, Ukraine.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're really going to get struck off if I start.
Oh, yeah, boy. Yeah.
Don't do that, please. And as we round out the week here today, Ed's got a story of one of our favorite topics. A woke military is a weak military. There's absolutely no doubt about that. If you're tuning in here for the first time, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you drop us a comment in there. Let us know where you're dialing in from. We'd love to see you. We'd love the interaction. Paulie, g'day. Nice to see you. Nice to have you here. Thanks for joining us again. Ed, have you got any more opening remarks before we kick it off?
Yeah. Hey, Paulie. Okay. Yeah. So shout out to all my friends in the Hey Ed WhatsApp group and everyone who's following me and us on the Hey Ed YouTube channel, because we do stream there now. Yeah. And if you do watch during the show here, please let us know where you're dialing in from, and give us a question or two.
Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff. All right, let's kick it off. What did Putin actually say in St. Petersburg? Before I go there and show you the video here, let me just give you some context. So he was over in St. Petersburg addressing, as you say, the domestic audience. It's an update. It's all this normal stuff that normal politicians actually go and do. Before I show you the video, I was just scrolling through my feed yesterday, and I saw it was a headline that said how many countries are actually in BRICS, and it had like a little emoji pointing down like that. Click to open, and it opened, and it went zoop, like that. It was probably about that big on my screen, and there must have been about another 20 odd countries that were in that. You know, hey, can we be part of that BRICS thing over there? Can we do that? Can we be part of that? I didn't see Ukraine in there yet, but no doubt at some time. I think the Victorian government was in there. Did you hear about that here in Sydney or here in Australia the other day?
The Victorian government.
So Dan Andrews, the dictator hunchback himself, had an event. I don't know how you describe it. He went to a dinner and he was a speaker at the dinner, right? But it was for the Chinese consulate staff and the Chinese business people and the Chinese community. And so he went there, a completely normal thing that a politician would do, right? They rock up and they speak to the various communities, and it's the business community, people investing in Victoria and all that sort of stuff. But there was no media allowed.
Victoria, where's Victoria?
So the southern state here in Australia.
Okay. All right, gotcha.
So he's gone to this place, and the Premier of Victoria, same as your governor in a state, he's gone to a meeting, and no media allowed. And he got in trouble for going to China and signing us up to the Belt and Road deal. And the Australian federal government had to pass legislation to unpick that, to say, hey, you can't do that. That's a federal thing, not a state level thing. And he's like, but I'm just trying to get investment for Victoria, and you guys are too slow. And I can kind of see his perspective.
Yeah, I can.
The reality is he's just overstepping the mark. It's just not his job.
Why isn't it his job?
Well, it's a federal responsibility. That's why. That's how kind of government works here in Australia. And his lack of transparency and his lack of understanding about what the potential threats are is just absolutely shocking. So, yeah, it's pretty. It's a really strange thing, actually. I think what's going on there in Victoria and what he's actually doing. So he destroyed the economy. He said no one was going to have to pay for it. Lumped the state with gazillions of dollars worth of debt, and now he's talking about stepping down and leaving politics altogether. So it's a really, really strange thing. All right, you back there with me, Ed?
I am. I don't know. Was that you or me?
No, that was you. I was just talking, man, and no one was listening. So all good.
Okay. Sorry.
We're good. We got you there. All right, let's have a look at what Putin has to say in line with the BRICS stuff here. So he's talking about economics and the economy here.
Very presumptuous. They are guided not by someone else's, but rather by their national interests. And with the countries of this type, the volume of our bilateral trade has increased by dozens of percentage points and sometimes several-fold, and they continue to grow. And this is yet another testimony to the fact that common sense, the verve of business, objective market laws are far stronger than the current political climate, and that means that the unsightly, essentially neo-colonial international system has ceased to exist, whereas the multipolar world order is getting ever stronger. This process is inevitable, which is often...
So it's a bit hard to see what he's saying there. So what is he really saying? I've watched it a couple of times, so I'll just give you the context there of it. He's saying that you put sanctions on us in an attempt to actually hurt us, but the opposite has actually happened. We've got double-digit growth. Mm-hmm. And in that double-digit growth, we're attracting more people that want to trade with us and work with us, and now we're destroying the colonial system and turning it into a multipolar system. And it goes back to the very heart of that original comment that he had right at the start of the war when all those sanctions were applied. He said, I wish you'd done it earlier. And here we are. We've done that. We've applied those sanctions. We're apparently causing him all sorts of financial pain and all sorts of problems in Russia. But the opposite seems to be true. Now, I don't know. The unspoken truth is I'm not in Russia. I'm in Cronulla, Sydney. I have absolutely no idea what's happening on the ground there. I saw a report with Scott Ritter. And I kind of have a bit of a love-hate relationship with this guy. I feel like he's a bit of a Putin apologist and maybe a Russian FSB double agent or something like that. Sometimes it just really kind of grinds my gears at the things he said. But he actually got off his ass and went to St. Petersburg. And he said the Russian economy was absolutely pumping. I don't know if you saw that report, Ed.
I did.
Yeah, so for catch everybody else up, he was saying the economy was pumping because the sanctions had been applied and all of the investment dollars that would typically go offshore outside of Russia were forced to go somewhere, and the only place that they could go was internally within the country. And I suppose that could only be a good thing, right? That's developing a country the way that it should be developed. Why is everybody looking offshore all the time for a return on their investment? Why aren't they investing in their own backyard? And Scott Ritter is saying that that's what the sanctions have done. And there's no surprise that Putin's talking about double-digit growth there.
No, that's right. Another thing to consider is, the West, mostly America, we're stealing all these Russian assets. In Canada just announced, Trudeau went to Ukraine, and they had confiscated like a really large Russian cargo airplane, and it had literally landed like 2 hours before the sanctions were put on, and so while it was on,
you get out, and you take that plane back to Kyiv.
That's right. That's
what he did.
So yesterday he said, so we'll give you that airplane, and they're doing this with a bunch of other Russian assets. They're freezing the assets, they're confiscating them, and they're turning them over, a lot of them over to Kyiv. So and look, the rest of the world is looking at this. Said listen, we can't trust doing business with America anymore, because if we do something that they don't like, they're just going to steal our money.
Why would you want to be part of the SWIFT system if that actually happened, right? That's like such a that's a second and third and fourth order effect that the people that are applying these sanctions to Russia don't really fully understand.
I mean, the net effect of what's going on, listen, we have a huge de-dollarization going on across the world. Hence, the BRICS nations, the BRICS coalition is growing larger and larger. There's a reason for that. Okay, the rest of the world is starting to. I think they've resented the way the West has done business, primarily America, for an awful long time, and they're just now. Hold on. Excuse me.
Achoo.
And the rest of the world is just now saying, you know what? We don't need the dollar anymore. Let's start looking for alternatives. Look at the Pan-African coalition that have been put together. Look what happened in Brazil, our own southern country. We have freaking Macron now planning to attend some big BRICS meeting. Could France be joining BRICS pretty soon?
I saw him and MBS were shaking hands, saying g'day to each other earlier today. So, and MBS has been very vocal with Tehran, and he's been, changing the way that the Abraham Accords is working, trying to bring Iran into that follow-up. What the hell, man? And so now Macron's talking to him. Remember Macron went to China just a couple of months ago, and he came back saying, the Chinese are doing it like this, we should do it like that as well. It's like, well, maybe there's a lot of good things the Chinese have actually got that you should listen to. And maybe instead of like trying to project force and power all the time, you project economic growth and help. So,
that deal you're referring to, Macron had come back from China after signing a huge natural gas agreement with China that's going to settle in the Chinese yuan rather than the dollar. So there you go. So people who you would assume were a staunch ally, they're now joining the BRICS nations, and pretty soon, I think that could be the end of the Ukrainian war. It's going to end with whatever.
Stop it, my head is like I need that emoji, the exploding head emoji.
And when is America going to learn their lesson? When are we going to say, you know what, our bad? And change their ways. I don't think they can at this point. We cannot change our ways. We're too deep into it.
Well, RFK said that on the Joe Rogan interview yesterday. He's saying, look, we've for years and years we've been doing all of this, and he said, just look at what China is doing. They're not going forth with projecting military force. They're going forward projecting economic force. And no matter what happens, America is still the number one in the world for the economy.
At the moment,
if RFK brought the military home and, slowly unpicked the world from the US military and then turned it all inward to grow the US economy, then everybody could move forward. But the problem is that nobody trusts each other. That's the utopian world that everybody lives in. Nobody trusts Xi Jinping with his giant military, his threats of taking over Taiwan or Hong Kong or something like that. And, and he's made good on a lot of his threats. as well. But equally, he's not out there kind of waving his finger at everybody saying you can't invade another country, you can't do this, you can't do that. He's kind of like playing the neutral game like the Indians were. Like, what do we care about what's going on in Ukraine and Russia? Here in China, I'm worried about Chinese stuff and what's happening there. One thing I want to say about Macron, sorry, I'll just close the loop there, was a lot of people don't realize, but when the giant boom of the late 90s and the noughties, when everybody was moving to China, I only kind of found out about this just recently, actually, is one of the debt trap diplomacy things that the Chinese do to foreign companies, you don't realize, is that if you set up in China and you're making money inside of China, you can't take that money offshore, yeah?
Yep.
So part of the reason that they want the French to settle in yuan is because once you've settled in yuan, we'll pay you those dollars, and those dollars stay inside of China. If we're buying, Chinese are going to buy gas that way, we're going to pay you in yuan, we're not going to pay you in euros. And there's a series of things that are happening there that they're doing to the Chinese economy internally is a basket case and completely collapsing. So they're looking externally to fix those problems as fast as humanly possible and trying to do all of these deals around the world as fast as humanly possible to solve the problem. One way to describe it is they're taking from Peter to pay Paul, like that, to prop up their economy and to keep it in play like that. It's an oversimplification, I know, I get it, I know. But that's something that not a lot of people actually realize that happens when people go and set up in China, is you can't take your money out of China. It's stuck there.
Oh yeah, no, China's got real serious issues. That's worth an episode all by itself one of these days, pretty soon. Listen, commerce is probably the single biggest way to avoid wars. Commerce is the single biggest solution to wars. We've seen arch enemies recently striking deals with Iran, and
And the Saudis.
Yeah, and the Saudis. Okay, so because commerce, hey, money matters, and war.
Oh, we lost Ed there for a second. You with us, mate? We got a bit of a sketchy internet connection today, folks. All right, I'm just going to keep moving forward on the live here, folks, as we go forward. I've got a couple of additional points that I'll share with you about Putin. Let me just pause the audio there so you can see it. I'll just play the video as it's going along. There's a couple of additional things that Putin had talked about, and so I've got the dot points from his speech. So he said the Russian Federation will attack F-16s even if they're not located in Ukraine. So he doesn't care if the Vipers are going to be located inside of Poland or inside of Romania, or they're launching from somewhere else. So he said he's going to attack them wherever they are, and that means that that's another escalation of the war. So this is a very, very scary thing. So NATO have come out and said in the last couple of days also that the training for Viper pilots has already begun. So we're in play, and those jets will be in play in the next 3 to 4 months. So that's actually a pretty significant development, but the Russians have said, who cares? It just doesn't matter. It's making no difference to them whatsoever at all. One of the other points that he raised, he said that he destroyed 5 Patriot complex near Kyiv. I don't know what is true or what is not true. Initially, when those Patriots were first there, initially the Russians said that they attacked one. The Ukrainians said, no, they didn't. The Russians said, yes, we did. Here's the video. There was video of it. It did come out. And then the Ukrainians came out and said, yes, they attacked us, but don't worry, it doesn't hurt us. It didn't do anything to us. So it's I don't know who to believe with this propaganda. It's a very, very strange thing. So he also said attacks on the Kremlin and the Belgorod region are attempts to provoke serious retaliatory actions by Russia. And during the counteroffensive, he said that Ukraine has lost more than 600 tanks and armored vehicles, which doesn't make any sense because they don't have that many tanks. They don't have, is it 600 tanks and armored vehicles, or 600 tanks as well as armored vehicles? I don't know. So if you look at his words and see what he's actually saying with his words, it's very difficult to actually really understand what's happening there. So he also said that very soon Ukraine will not be able to fight because it will run out of equipment, which seems to be the case on the Russian side from the Ukrainian perspective. They don't have the ability to resist the counteroffensive. They don't have the ability to solve the problems that they've got currently as well. So the Ukrainians are saying almost the same things as what the Russians are, which is very, very confusing for an outside observer. And to Ed's point earlier, he was saying that you got to remember who the audience is and who we're talking about or who we're talking to in relation to these things. So it makes it very, very difficult. And to close it out, Putin said that Poland wants to bring Western Ukraine under its control. So that's something that's been on the table for a little while and something that they've been talking about as well. Let me just give you a quick update on the deep state map, because that actually is pretty telling, although we know that it's a couple of days old. So we know here in the southern part of Ukraine actually what's going on. So over here near Bakhmut, where the fighting has been ongoing, a fair bit of ground has been retaken. So you would remember the map looked like where my mouse is here to sort of this road junction here. It was kind of not taken, and the Ukrainians own that. The Russians push forward, or the Wagner group push forward. Wagner have pulled out. Russia is back in there, and the Ukrainians have come back in, and they've taken back a bunch of ground there as well. So as we pull down towards the southern part of the map, you can see the fighting is ongoing in the grey part. The blue part is contested, and the green means they've taken back that ground. So the counteroffensive is underway, and they are taking the ground back. They're not taking a huge amount of ground back, but it's also said from the Ukrainian side that they haven't deployed all of their forces, and they certainly haven't deployed their reserves. And what we're seeing at the moment is a shaping of the battlefield. The main effort hasn't yet begun. So when I look at all of that, I wonder, what's really going on here? Is there some truth to what Putin is actually saying? Is there some evidence of what he's saying is actually true? It's very, very hard to tell, because on the Ukrainian side, I see very similar things. They're saying very similar things to what Putin is, but about their side, of course, that the Russians can't resist us. They don't have any weapons, but the counteroffensive in the south doesn't seem to be pushing forward as hard as what everybody anticipated that it actually would, because the Russians have been dug in for 5 or 6 months now, and they've been anticipating this because they've got the ground, they've held the ground, and they're not giving it up without a fight. So we just seem to be, in my view, in an extended stalemate in this conflict, and neither side is able to make any progress, which leads me to the next part of the show, and I want to talk to everybody about Trump's reaction to his indictment. So we've all heard that he was indicted in a court. They're very serious charges. There was 37 charges brought against the guy, and if one of them sticks, he'll get 10 or 20 years in jail. They're very, very serious charges. So his reaction to that has come out stronger than ever. So let's take a little listen to that video.
Carlson, a very good guy, is exactly right. The number one reason the totally corrupt Biden administration and the sick Washington establishment are after me is because I stand up to their failed foreign policy agenda. The one thing Washington cannot forgive is that I put America first, always put America first. I could never help it. I have to do that in order to make America great again. I reject their foolish and disastrous foreign wars, their horrific globalist trade deals, their open border catastrophes, their corruption of our intelligence system, and it's never been more corrupt, and all of the other betrayals of the American people. Most recently, the warmongers, globalists, and deep staters are absolutely livid that I refuse to bend the knee to their next endless war in Ukraine. I want peace. They want money, and they want conflict, even if it means walking us into the brink of World War III, which, frankly, it is doing, and it's doing it rapidly. I want people to stop dying. I want to end that war. I'll end that war between those two countries in 24 hours. It won't even take that long. I will get the war ended. I'll stop all of those lives from being wasted and lost. And there'll be no more bombing of Ukraine. There'll be no more bombing of Russia. And everybody will be happy. That's why, despite the massive criminality and corruption of the Clintons, the Bidens, the Obamas, and all the rest, none of them ever get indicted or ever get investigated. They're totally protected by a fake and disgusting system. But I did everything right, and the system tries to throw me right into a jail. They can't beat me at the ballot box, so they're out there trying to take me out by other means, anything they can think of. These people don't love our country. As I've said before, if I renounced my beliefs or if I stayed silent, the persecution would stop. If I didn't run for office or if I wasn't leading by a lot, it would all end and end very nicely. I'd have a much easier life. But I can't do that, and I won't do that. The fact is that we're leading by a lot because they're doing a bad job. We're leading Ron DeSanctimonious by 40 points, and we're leading Joe Biden by 10, 11, 12, by a lot. I'm going to take on all of the forces that are trying to destroy this country, and I'm going to win for you. On November 5th, 2024, justice will be done. Thank you very much.
All right, Ed, welcome back. You had a little reboot there of your computer. Everything working now?
Oh, we'll see.
There it is. Your internet connection's way better already straight away, so it's good.
Good.
What do you think when you see Trump like that? Did you see that yesterday?
Yeah, I did not see it. That's the first time I saw it. Classic Trump. He has not lost a step. Now, he's not a real smooth talker, right? But that's one of his charms for the average American, for the people who voted for him, because he's not a slick politician who is calculating in his message. You know, there's no filter between his brain and his mouth, which is good and bad, right? from a diplomatic perspective, sometimes even I say, ouch, you know, but you know, you don't have to worry that he's catering to a crowd, he's pandering to a crowd. You're getting the guy. So that right there, you know, and he's not a typical politician, and this makes him a threat to the swamp. That's why they're going after him. I would disagree with him a little bit. If he stopped running for president, if he bowed out of this, they're not going to stop going after him because they have to make an example out of him. They have to let the world know that if you challenge the state, if you challenge, you know, the deep state, you know, we're going to ruin your life. And not just you, but everyone around you. One of the reasons why he has a hard time getting quality people to work for him, because they all know that they're going to be gone after by the deep state just because they're associated, right?
Mm. My question to you there, Ed, is do you think the guy has spite in his heart? Is it spiteful what he's saying? Oh dear, we have another technical.
Yeah.
Are you with me there, mate?
No, I think Trump is a very practical man, really. And I mean, he purposely did not, when he came into office, he didn't sick his DOJ on Hillary, which he certainly could have, because there was a lot there to work with, right? He just said, nah, it doesn't serve the country. I do think that he looks at things through the perspective of, is this going to make America great again? I do think that's the measure he takes with any issue. So, well, how will this benefit America? Even though I might want to do it, in the end, it's going to cost too much more than it's worth, whether it's monetarily or just through the time drain and the energy drain. And he wants to. I think he's legacy oriented, and for him as a businessman, that means getting a long laundry list of things actually done. And you know, you always have to weigh, well, how much time and energy am I going to waste? Am I going to spend on that particular project? So I don't think. I mean, now I think he's saying things. He's using rhetoric like, "I'll go after Joe." Which listen, the Democrats, they've cracked the egg, right? They've opened the door. Okay, you know, what goes around comes around, and hey, politics will never be the same. We now could potentially head down the road of a third world, you know, banana republic where you imprison, you go after your opponents, you try to put them in jail. This is what the Democrats have done. So they've opened. It's a very dangerous, a very disgraceful event that they've done, and this will go down in history as one of the most disgraceful periods of our history, if history is honest, right? But having said that, I think he might use that rhetoric in order to gin up his base a little bit. My guess is once he gets into office, he probably won't, because then that's what his presidency will be about the entire 4 years. It's going to be all about, you know, that controversy, and that's going to get in the way of him actually getting things done. So
it's a very interesting time, and the divisiveness is there for everybody to see. It's like front and center for everybody. I just noticed in the comments there, you know, lock them up, lock up the Biden family. People want that, right? So, and Paulie says, well, I like Trump, and that's he's annoying the cabal. the fact that he's annoying the cabal is even better. And yeah, you're quite right. You know, it's very, very easy to sit back as the armchair critic, as we all are, me, you, Paulie, and everybody else out there going, lock him up, he's a crook, he's a criminal, he shouldn't be doing that. You know, even Trump says the Biden crime family, that's how he's referring to it.
He loves his monikers. Trump loves his labeling.
So that's not spite, you just think that that's kind of
No,
just getting the message through. That's creating outrage in me as the constituent, though, right?
Yeah. Listen, it'd be a real sense of justice, I think, for your conservative or traditional Americans. Yeah, well, he got what he deserved. Most people feel, and it's true, that we have a dual justice system in America. Our system is not blind like it's supposed to be. And it hasn't been for decades. Our government is infested with liberal ideology. That is the deep state. If you're a conservative, or if you have traditional values, or if you believe in the actual rule of law, you're not going to work your way up the ladder at the DOJ. It's not going to happen. You're not going to get that promotion. Those are reserved for people who toe the line. That's the way the world is. And they are so entrenched in Washington, it's going to be virtually impossible to undo it. The best thing you can do is try to get things done around the edges. If he were to become president and actually he's not supposed to direct the DOJ to do anything, right? It's supposed to be an independent, agency. But if he hired an attorney general who was of the mind of going after the Biden family, would that really serve the country? I know, it would feel good. I mean, I would love to see it happen, but I know, talking about creating a civil war, and then what's the practical effect of that? Because this is a very divided country. We are a 49 country. There's a very small middle, in there, and you're just gonna, I think magnanimity would go an awful long way. If he became president, he said something like, as much as I would like to go after them, I just don't think it would serve the country's best interest. So, in the spirit of moving forward, I'm going to let it pass. And it's going to feel, it's like swallowing really, really bitter medicine. Say, I hate the idea that Biden and the Clintons would get away with the corruption. I hate the idea of that. But in the end, is it really going to serve, is really going to move the country forward? And I think
here's my version of the unspoken truth, because you're right there. You've got my little Boy Scout thing going on there, seeing the good in the world, right? Which is you have to be optimistic about the world, right? You can't be a pessimist all the time. But I really think a lot of this has got to do with just by ratings and a popularity contest, because your election is a popularity contest, right?
Yep.
It's quite different to what we have here, but it's still a popularity contest in any country in the world. Like, who's the right person for the job? Do you think that person has the right disposition for the job? And what I see a lot of it is, all of this Hunter Biden garbage, all of this Joe Biden corruption and Donald Trump corruption, 100% of that could be done behind closed doors. 100% of that could be, the investigation happens, it's been ongoing for the last 2 years, here's the evidence, we've presented it to the courts, off we go. But for whatever reason, everything is trial by media. And it's trial by media to get you talking about it. And it's trial by media because the Democrats who own the media want that on the media, so you're talking about their policies and you're outraged about the opposite side's behavior. And the opposite is true as well. They're talking about, the Republicans are talking about the Democrats' policies to create outrage, and this story is a self-perpetuating, self-fulfilling prophecy that never goes away because it's fed by the media.
Yep.
But if they were really serious about it, to your point, when Trump gets to office and the boss, the Attorney General comes in and says, "Hey, boss, what are we going to do about this?" He could say, "Don't do anything, man. Just leave it alone. Let it go." Or he could say, "I want you to do it. I want you to dedicate all of these resources to it, but I want you to do it on the down low. Don't tell anybody in the media until you've got 100% of the evidence." And he's actually sitting in the dock being indicted.
Yeah, I don't think, I don't think you could have him dead to freaking rights. You could have pictures of him taking a brown paper bag full of cash from some guy from Burisma. You could have that picture. You could have him on tape. You could have him on videotape. You could have him, French kissing a Ukrainian prostitute, on video. And it's not going to do anything to advance America's interests. And I think, if he were to go after Biden, I think he'd be playing right into the media's hands.
Yes, that's I agree. I agree completely.
That's what the story would be about for 4 years. It'd be about how Trump is going after their guy. That'll be the whole story, 24/7. That's all they'll ever talk about, and there'll be no air in the room left for anything that he wants to get done.
Yeah,
so
I agree. It's the Star Wars character. It's a trap.
Yeah, exactly. It's a trap. But if he was magnanimous, and he says something like, "Yeah, you know what? I know the Department of Justice is supposed to be independent, but I'm going to encourage them to let sleeping dogs lie because our country has more important things to worry about." The media, it'll take all the wind out of the sails of the media. What the hell are they going to talk about? Now he's a good guy. Now they're not going after their guy now, and now they're going to be forced to say, you know what, he's looking out. So I think he shouldn't play into the media's hands. So my guess is that he'll use that rhetoric during the election for the purposes of ginning up his base. But once he's in, being the businessman that he is, he's a typical businessman where he likes to check the boxes. All right, I need to get this done. So I do this, boom, 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 boom. Look, he was a very successful real estate developer in freaking Manhattan.
Yeah,
you know what kind of a cutthroat business that is. I mean, the fact that he was able to succeed in that environment tells you how tough he is, and the fact that he wants results. For him, it's about results, and he hires people based on their qualifications. Can they get it done? He had. He was famous before he became president. He was famous for being the first guy to hire female, contractors who were the head of this and the head of that because they were good at their job. So for him, it's about meritocracy. So it
makes sense. Yeah. Oh, we've lost Ed again.
Really?
There it
again?
is. There you go.
Okay.
No, you're back.
That kind of business mind, I think that's what's going to serve America. Let's just get things done, and everything else is noise. Everything else is entertainment. But let's just get things done.
It's really interesting. There's one other thing that we're kind of not factoring in and not really talking about. There is that there's millions of people out there that are really completely and totally outraged by Joe Biden's behavior or Donald Trump's behavior for that matter. And there's a lot of people out there that will go and investigate that themselves. There's the investigative journalists that will do that. There's plenty of people that have created specials and, hit pieces and written articles and stuff like that. And I want to close the loop on this Donald Trump thing by sharing my screen quickly. I just want to share my Twitter feed with you. And so I came across this morning. It's kind of beyond the scope of actually this report, but just scrolling through here. So this is the handle here. So we'll make sure you give them a follow like that. So this is the sequence of events that they've said, right? So emails from the Biden laptop reveal a newly discovered Hunter Biden Maltese bank account opened by Burisma that coincides with a $10 million bribery allegation involving Biden and Burisma, as reported by an FBI source. So what they've done here, so that's number one of the thread. So this is number two of the thread. So it says what it is. Number 3, number 4, there it is there. Number 5, here it is here. Number 6, number 7. And as we scroll on a little bit further, there's number 8, there's number 9 of the thread, number 10. So somebody's taken the time to put all this together, right? And as I come down here to number 14 of the thread, there's the bag of money. In 2020, Ukraine officials seized $6 million cash bribe, a $6 million cash bribe linked to Mykolai Zalewski, or whatever his name is. Sorry, I butchered his name there. The bribe consisted of $100 bills wrapped in rubber bands and held in plastic bags, aimed to stop an investigation into the founder of Burisma Holdings. So there you go. And all of the evidence is already there. It's out there in the public sphere, right? So, look, this is CNN, for heaven's sake. And here's somebody who put together... So this is pretty cool. So Marco Polo, this person here, give him a follow, released a 630-page report on the Biden laptop with 2,020 citations that thoroughly documents 459 crimes committed by the Biden family and their business associates. 140 business crimes, 191 sex crimes, 128 drug crimes. And there's the book as he's flicking through the book in the little video that you can see explaining exactly what's done. So, one of the things that, like I said, that we're not factoring in is that there's a lot of investigative journalists and a lot of people out there that are pretty outraged about what's going on, and they'll take it upon themselves because they believe that what you actually said, man, that the blinders of Lady Justice are not on. It's rules for thee and rules for me. And that's something that people hold very dear in their value system. So they'll go and take somebody's entire laptop and gigabytes of data and write a book about it and put it out there and say, look, here it is. And then the silence is deafening from the mainstream media. If the media were not owned by the Democrats, if the media were not owned by the deep state, that stuff would be on every single person's computer as a free PDF to look at. But the reality is that stuff just gets shut down completely.
Well, see, and therein lies the value of freedom of speech and alternative media. Now, when I was growing up, we had 4 channels on the TV, and that's it. And they were all liberals. There was no alternative media, unless you subscribe to the right, the few occasional conservative magazines and newspapers. But it was work to get that alternative media. Nowadays, with the advent of the alternative media that we have, people are free to do. You're going to have that odd person who puts in the time and the effort to produce, world quality type, investigative material. So that's the value of free speech. That's the value of alternative media. And if you'll notice that now the government is not supposed to interfere with free speech, right? But we know that they offshore the censorship through the back door.
I encountered some censorship this morning, exactly what you're describing, but this censorship is completely 100% related to the narrative. And so as it relates to the Ukraine war, and normal people just going about their normal day, cursory scrolling through the news or through their social media and then going to work and, living their lives would not notice this, because it takes someone like myself that's looking at this from 5 or 6 different perspectives to try and figure out what's actually true or what's not. That's what the idea of the unspoken truth is, right? Yeah. So I look in my Telegram channel. I knew Putin was in St. Petersburg. I was watching the back of my eyelids when he was doing that speech, so I didn't see it live. And so I find some sound bites of it on Twitter, the little bits and pieces that I showed you there. There's some sound bites. Then I go to my Telegram channel and I look through Telegram and I'm saying, are they saying, I don't speak Russian, right? I hold my phone up to the speaker of my computer as he's speaking, and I'm looking at the translation and looking at what they're saying. Yes, so it's been translated correctly, or the gist of it, right? It's enough. It's good enough, and the points that I mentioned before. So the key thing that Putin said in that speech was the Russian Federation will attack F-16s even if they are not located in Ukraine. So if those Vipers end up in, like I said, in Poland or in Romania, which are the 2 closest countries to go and strike Russian targets in Ukraine, and the logistics and the supply chains are existing there, Putin's going to attack them. So he's going to fire missiles at them, cruise missiles, he'll put drones on them, whatever he's going to do, however he's going to attack them, right? He's come out and said that he will attack them. So I see that in my Twitter feed, relatively uncensored and no curation of content. It's not curated there for me to see, right? So there's just people that have listened to that speech, somebody's deciphered it, put the points up there, put the video up there and put it out there. I happened to follow that person and I saw it. So that's how I've come across it. In Telegram, exactly the same. Somebody's listened to that speech, they've clipped a little bit of Putin's speech out, they've translated it for me, and they've done a voiceover with the translation, or they've typed a voiceover there for me so I can read it. So somebody's taken the time to do that. It's a human being. So now when I go to Google, what does Google say? What does BBC say? What does Reuters say? What does CNN say? And I look at all media, right? Because it's not all bad all the time. Sometimes like mainstream media just has a normal story like everybody else. If they're reporting on a hurricane or a cyclone or something like that, it's the same as everybody else. So it's not always bad. But when I look at Google, do you know how many stories I saw about that?
0.
None. So if you Google, will Putin attack F-16s, what's Russia's reaction to F-16s? There's nothing. So what does that tell you? It tells you that they want us to think the number 1 search engine on planet Earth, just about all searches, whenever you're going to do something, you're going to Google it. I'm not going to Yahoo it, or I'm not going to Bing it. I might, but the chances of me using Google are much higher than doing something else like that, right? So if I'm interested in the news and I heard, oh, wow, Ukraine are getting F-16s, what does that mean? What are the Russians going to do? What's their reaction? there is no reaction. They don't want you to know that there's a reaction, because if there is F-16s, because what they don't want you to know is that that is the biggest escalation of this entire conflict. Because as soon as we got Vipers and Viper-trained pilots and Viper-trained crews to fix those things, and we're attacking targets in Ukraine that are Russians, and the Russians have got no counter to it, the only thing that Russians can really do is go, you know what, I'm just going to fire some cruise missiles at that airbase. I don't care if it's in Germany, who cares? Fire it at Ramstein. So what? They're attacking us on our territory, we're going to attack them on their territory. And then that's going to trigger Article 5, and NATO's in a war. So the reason that Google don't want you to know what Russia's going to do if F-16s actually arrive in the next couple of months is because it's the biggest escalation into World War III that you've ever seen. I don't know, man. Just saying. I saw the Unspoken Truth myself this morning.
Well, and this is why, just like everything else in the world, capitalism is a solution to every problem. What I mean by that is, sites, someone out there is going to put together, and they already have put together sites where freedom of speech is actually allowed, where you can say what's on your mind, where you can find, where you're most likely to find the truth. Now, here's the trade-off, right? If you have a truly free speech platform, that means you allow everyone to say anything they want, with just a couple of exceptions. You can't, you can't instigate violence, you can't promote violence, that kind of thing. You can't show someone a step-by-step instruction about how to build a bomb, things like that. All right. So
why not?
But other than that, okay, we'll talk. I'm still waiting for that video, Rob. But other than that one exception, everything should be allowed. Even the most vile speech out there, even if it's pro-Nazism, because that's what true freedom of speech is. The best answer to speech that you don't like is more speech. Okay, so when you have a true free speech site, that's good. People are going to gravitate.
Oh no, we've lost him again. We got such a sketchy internet connection this morning, folks. We're really sorry about that here on the live. I just want to offer a comment there for Ed as he's dialing back in and getting sorted out there, because it's not really working there for him. He's completely frozen. He's saying that the answer to free speech is more free speech. And if you don't like that speech, what I'd experienced earlier with that Google problem was, there he is. Hello.
Am I here? Okay.
Yeah, there, you're here now. Sorry about that, mate.
No, I'm sorry.
I'll just pull you out of the stream.
It's on my side. Yeah.
So you're saying that the answer to hate speech is more speech. One really interesting thing that happened this morning was that no one was really censored from sharing what Putin was saying in St. Petersburg. There's plenty of people saying it. Heaps of people on Telegram saying it, and lots of people in Twitter saying it. Heaps of people, right? So they're not being censored by it. What we're seeing in Google is a narrative, because not everybody's on Twitter, and definitely not very many people are in that Telegram channel that I'm looking. There's 60,000 people in there. There's 100,000 people there. A big Telegram channel has 500,000 people in it or something like that. But in the scheme of things, in the scheme of planet Earth, it's not very much. And even if every single person in that Telegram channel shared it 10 times each, it still wouldn't reach that many people. So it doesn't encroach upon the narrative at all. But free and open media like we have, like what you and I are doing here, is creating inroads into those things and helping people to understand exactly what's going on. And instead of perpetuating the narrative that Reuters want me to see, or what BBC in the UK want me to see, I'm perpetuating the truth, and I'm sharing the truth of actually what's going on. So just be careful, folks, when you're Googling things and you're seeing a reaction to that. See if you can triangulate it. See if you can get it from 3 different sources. My sources that I like to go to are Twitter, because they're just normal human beings like everyday people, right, that are seeing things and sharing that around. You just have to be careful when you're seeing those sorts of things that they're not actually an accidental instrument of the deep state, meaning that they're accidentally sharing propaganda that is designed to point you towards a narrative one way or the other. It's a very, very tricky thing. So just be careful of that. So I use Twitter, I use Telegram, I use a bunch of other places as well to cross-reference my material. All right, shifting gears from there, I've only got just one last thing before we throw to your little segment there. We mentioned at the top of the show here, just in our discussion today, that we now know that the US Department of Energy has come out and said it's most likely that COVID came from a lab in Wuhan. There's been that hit piece report that came out saying that we now know who patient 0 is. And we also know who patient 2 and 3 are. And guess where they worked? Yep, you got it. They worked in the lab in Wuhan, and they were actually working on those coronaviruses. So all of that verification has come out, and it's been proven to be true. So I'm not saying anything that's not true. I'm not perpetuating any other narrative. It's all investigative journalism that's come out with the documents to actually back it if you haven't seen it. Michael Schellenberger has an article on his Substack about that as well, which is pretty interesting. So that was something that I wanted to share as well. So I just want to, we all know that Bill Gates is the biggest philanthropic donor to the World Health Organization. And for whatever reason, if you look at the book on the shelf there behind me, The Real Anthony Fauci, written by Robert F. Kennedy himself, I've listened to that audiobook twice, and I've read through the various pieces in that book, for additional. Did I hear that right? Let me see. And I look in the book and I kind of just get verification there as well. And remember that every single claim in that book has never been refuted. Nothing that Robert F. Kennedy has said in that book has ever been refuted. Nobody has said, no, that's not true. And he said that. He said at the start of the audio book, he goes, hey, I'm open. If I've made a mistake here, just reach out to me. Here's the website. Here's the link. Here's the contact page. Send us a message. And if you think that this is incorrect, we'll verify it. And several times I've seen him in an interview, people are like, no, nobody's ever said anything. And the reason they've never said anything is maybe there's 2 reasons. One, they couldn't be bothered. Like, what's this crazy person saying? Or 2, that's not true. But then they've got no evidence to verify that it's not true because he's got multiple references for everything that he's actually saying. He's backed up every single claim because he's a lawyer. He knows exactly what he's doing, right? So
that's why they'll never debate him.
Exactly, right? So we know that Bill Gates is the biggest funder of the WHO. And we also know that Fauci at the start said that this is not like from a lab. We know that. It's not from a lab. But look at, it looks like it's come from animal to human, and this is what we've got going on. And in that book, RFK details very well exactly why he does that and how that happens and what's going on. And if you haven't read that, you must read that book. It's like the most important book of the last 10 years. And that's because our whole world's economy was destroyed and our whole way of life has been completely destroyed because of just a handful of people. And Bill Gates is implicated in it. Yeah, Bill Gates is implicated in it because of vaccinations, because of money, because of the WHO. In probably 15 different ways, he's implicated in all of this. So he was in China with Xi Jinping. And I just want to show you this quick video and just listen in to what he says and watch Xi Jinping's body language. So he's just a dude, right? He's the autocratic dictator. He's the ruler, right? He's like the emperor of China. If you rewound the clock 500 years, he'd be wearing a robe or something like that, but it'd be exactly the same body language. And Xi Jinping is a pretty squared away dude. He's always, his hair's always properly done. He's always wearing a really nice suit. He seems to be very polite when he's meeting people. And when you hear his speeches, he's really articulate. If you listen to what Mike Pompeo says about him, he's like just a horrible person. He's like awful. But when you see him in the media, he's dialed in exactly the way that you want your leader to be. I'd expect all world leaders to be like that. He's a model for all of that, just the way that he is. He's very stoic, all of that stuff. So watch Billy Boy's body language and the way that it's very strange. So I've got the graphic on the screen. It says, what's going on with Bill Gates here? Let's have a look and let's have a quick chat about that and see what's actually going on.
To have this chance to meet. And we've always had great conversations, and we'll have a lot of important topics to discuss today. I was very disappointed I couldn't come during these last 4 years. And so it's very exciting to be back.
What's going on there, man? Let me just play it again without the sound. And even watch Xi Jinping, his face is like not what are you saying, but like, what are you doing? Look at him like squirming around in the chair there with his hands and stuff. And he's not looking at him. He's like, Xi Jinping's like, what the fuck are you talking about, dude? And just let me back up the video there. Look at the difference in how they're sitting. There's a lot to be said for the body language and world leaders and how they have a conversation. Are they seriously listening to them? Are they interested in what they're saying? Are they thinking ahead? Xi Jinping his body language is listening to him. He's sitting flat. He's got his arms there. His feet are flat on the floor. He's facing towards him. And Bill Gates is like this hunched over, like something. What's going on there, man? Do you think the cat's out of the bag there, or What are you thinking?
It's hard to say. I would love to draw the same conclusion as you, but as a baseline, Gates has always been a sloucher. If you ever go back and watch him, any interview, anytime you see me, he's a sloucher. So
Sitting in
that's
front of a
not.
computer his whole life.
Well, yeah, he's always like sat back. It's like he looks like how I felt the past few days. I threw my back out, and so I'm leaning back in my chair a lot. He looks like he's just laying. So I don't know. I suppose there might be something to what you're saying.
Why is he squirming around in the chair though? Look at this. How watch his legs as he's squirming around in the chair.
Well, it is. Okay. Well, for one thing, it is kind of a weird chair. Look how high those armrests are. I don't know if I was sitting there and had my arms on it. You have your choice. You got to put your arms on the armrests, which are high, so your elbows are high, or you just put your elbows along the side and put your hands, and you look like a nun, and with your hands, across. So,
or you could have your hands in front of you, or you could lean forward like that with your body language. I just paused the video there at the start of it. Is his tie tucked into his pants?
Well, again, I would love to say,
or is that just the angle?
I'd love to see. Yeah, no, I think his pants are kind of like bunched up, and his tie is kind of.
Are you sure? It looks like he tucked his tie into his strides, and then he sat down.
I know. Look like that, but you know how you sit down. Sometimes your pants bunch up there or around the.
Look.
Okay, all right.
It's tucked into his. His tie is tucked into his.
Again, you can't take the nerd out of the billionaire.
Well, that's why I wanted to show this video. Like, what's going on, man? He's like wiggling around in his chair, but he's not just wiggling around with his arms. He's doing it with. Look at his hips, man, as he's sitting in the chair. Look at his hips moving around. Watch. What's going on there? And Xi Jinping's like, What are you doing? Are you okay?
You gotta wonder. Bill Gates is thinking, I'm too sexy for them, and I'm too sexy for
Oh my God, it's just. I look at Xi Jinping and just wonder what's going through his head. There it is. All right. We seem to have lost Ed again. Let's see. Take a little break, ladies and gentlemen, and see if we can fix that problem there for us.
Am I here?
Oh, he's back. There it is.
Okay. I apologize.
Let's just take
guys.
a little break here, and we'll see if we can fix that. We'll be right back. In this crazy, uncertain world, we all need a way to protect and insulate ourselves from the outside forces that we simply cannot control. I'm a news junkie, and after a lifetime of constantly immersing myself in the darkness and the despair that engulfs the world, the path to shield myself and my family has become crystal clear. I want to invite you to come and join me in the Unspoken Truth community, where I'll show you how I protect my family from this crazy world. You'll get access to 3 masterclasses worth over $1,000, as well as our live events, training, and community of truthers just like you. Come on over to the unspokentruth.com.au and join us for just 50 cents a day. What are you waiting for? Get started now at the unspokentruth.com.au. Alrighty, let's fingers crossed that we don't have any more interruptions to the broadcast there. Sorry about all of that, folks. Unfortunately, we can't control the internet connection or the speed of it. Normally, StreamYard's pretty useful and pretty good there, and normally our equipment is good, but it's just not playing ball with us today. So thank you for bearing with us. Ed, you wanted to talk about the woke military. Did you see something in the media that was pointing out wokeness in the military? I haven't seen anything recently, actually.
I see these things, all the time, and it really every time I see it, it raises my blood pressure. Then what the, it ticks me off. I thought, well, let me blow off some steam and cover it a little bit, so we can have a discussion about it, and maybe I'll feel better afterwards.
All right, here we go. Let's have a look.
All right. Okay, so this is an article out of Zero Hedge. Space Force chief says state anti-LGBT laws threaten U.S. military readiness. Space Force chief says state anti-LGBT laws threaten U.S. military readiness. At a Pride event this month held at the Pentagon, Space Force Chief Operating Officer Lieutenant General Deanna Burt attacked proliferation of over 400 state regulations, which she described as anti-LGBTQ, and suggested that such laws were a danger to military readiness and to individual soldiers. The how and why of her claims are not as clear, though Burt appeared to insinuate that these laws could distract service members from their duties by preventing them from being their true selves. The fact of the matter is that the DoD is catering to a slim minority of activists, most of whom will never join the military anyway, and have very little to offer in combat roles, even if they did. Studies show that 77% of all Gen Z candidates are unfit for military duty because of mental instability and physical limitations. In the meantime, they are alienating the primary candidates for combat, namely fighting age conservatives and independents, most of them males. This has been the historical standard without fail. Regardless of how one feels about the overall purpose of the military in American foreign policy, it would appear at the same time, U.S. forces are being made into a laughingstock in the eyes of the world. Let's take a listen to her speech.
Since January of this year, more than 400 anti-LGBTQ+ laws have been introduced at the state level. That number is rising and demonstrates a trend that could be dangerous for service members, their families, and the readiness of the force as a whole. When I look at potential candidates, say for squadron command, I strive to match the right person to the right job. I consider their job performance and relevant experience first. However, I also look at their personal circumstances, and their family is also an important factor. It's a good match for a job does not feel safe being themselves and performing at their highest potential at a given location, or if their family could be denied critical health care due to the laws in that state. I am compelled to consider a different candidate and perhaps less qualified. Those barriers are a threat to our readiness, and they have a direct correlation to the resiliency and well-being of our most important.
Okay, I don't know about you, but I can't take it anymore. Listen, the military is not a social experiment. They have a job. Their job is to defend our country. Their job is not to cater to a very small minority of confused people. So let's open it for discussion.
I can't take it anymore. I got to get that song. We're not going to take it. We're gonna take it. I didn't quite get what she was trying to say, that lady, that Air Force general. What was she saying? I've got to consider the right person for the right job, but then I consider their personal circumstance. If that's not right, then I got to. But so what is she talking about? That the laws in a given state don't protect gay and lesbian people? Is that what she's saying?
Well, there are some states that are passing laws restricting parents from taking children into a clinic for puberty blockers, or to have their breasts, cut off when they're 13 years old.
So the passing of those laws is affecting her decisions.
Exactly.
How many people in the military would that affect?
Exactly.
Two.
Exactly. Those kind of people generally are not interested in joining the military to begin with. So she should be. Her biggest issue is whether she can find enough people who can do 10 push-ups. That's her biggest issue. Is we got a lot of fat young people who would love to join the military, but they can't run around. They can't do a lap around the track.
I found a picture of Xi Jinping listening to that. He was
what the hell are you talking about?
He's Xi Jinping going, what are you talking about? He's got one eye kind of half closed and his head tilted to the side slightly, going, what on earth are you talking about? Nobody in the PLA is having this conversation. No human resources person when the lieutenant colonel comes up for promotion and gets, set for a command role, no one in there is going, I wonder if their family's okay. I wonder if I can send them to this part of China. What the fuck's going on, man? What do you do about that? How do you fight back against something like that? Because it's people like her that are perpetuating it.
Yeah, they're destroying our military from within.
Why would you say that publicly? I get it. If it's behind closed doors, fine. But why would you say it publicly?
It's Pride Week. It's Pride Week. You got the boss, flying the pride flag. She's getting points with the bosses. General Milley is as woke as they come.
It's just got nothing to do with their job, right? But she's saying that it's got everything to do with their job. If someone's appropriately qualified, okay, cool. The next gate that they have to go through is their family life squared away. How could you possibly know anything about that? So even if you had one of those children that was going through that process and was having a hard time, a 13-year-old girl or something like that, how would you possibly know that?
Okay.
Like,
No,
how is that a consideration?
No, you can't. One of the stats that she quoted during the speech, and I didn't cover it here to respect time. She said 20% of all military age people, like between 2000 and 2004, born between, they said 20% of them would be considered LGBTQ, WXYZ, people. And so, 20%, that's 2 out of 10. You go down the local schoolyard and pull out 10 random kids. 2 of them apparently, want to have their dicks cut off. That's pretty big. I mean,
it's just not true, hey?
I can't imagine that's true. If that is true, that our society is doomed. How the hell is a guy who has his dick cut off going to have babies? Our societies are doomed if that's the case.
The depopulation agenda.
Yeah. I don't buy the idea that our national security is at risk because certain states decide to defend children from molestation. I can't imagine that's true.
That's the crux of her argument, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Because I can't put the appropriately qualified, I have to put a less qualified person in because of those state laws.
Right. That's her argument.
I thought people in the military are not allowed to comment on politics. Particularly the U.S. military.
Well, they're not supposed to, but they do all the time. There is supposed to be a Chinese wall there, right? But the military has always been used as a social petri dish. Remember we had that big don't ask, don't tell, transition there when Clinton was in office, right? That, well, we can't quite go toward welcoming gays outright, so we'll just keep it to yourself. And so don't ask, don't tell was a big thing. And that was so it's always been used as the military has always been dragged into the social discussion because the liberals demand that
they do. Are you with me, Ed? Oh no, we've lost him again. Another technical interruption on the show today. Unfortunately, it's not there. I wanted to just highlight something there. I'll just pull Ed out of the stream while he comes back in. I just wanted to highlight something there to help you understand when you're seeing something like this with a military person or you're looking at something. I read a book a couple of years ago called Never Split the Difference. Let's add him back in. There he is. I read a book. I was just saying that I read a book a couple of years ago called Never Split the Difference, and it's written by a fellow named Chris Voss. And Chris was an FBI negotiator. And, what is there to be learnt from an FBI negotiator? And the idea of never splitting the difference is nobody's ever happy in the negotiation, right? And how do you negotiate with a terrorist who's got hostages and they're threatening, world destruction or murder and chaos and all of the things that are around them that these naughty people do? So essentially, you can boil down everything that he's said and what he says in that book to one word. And he says, the word that he says is how. So when somebody makes a demand, a terrorist makes a demand and says, all right, I want 2 vans, a helicopter, and $4 million. And I want that in the next 48 minutes. You've got till the top of the hour to actually make it happen. And what the FBI negotiators would do would be like, oh, well, that's really nice, man. So what sort of bus do you want me to get? How many people have you got in there again? You got 12 people. So do you want me to get two 8-seater buses, or do you want me to get you one 22-seater bus, or do you want me to get you one 12-seater bus? Which bus would you like? And so what the idea of the FBI negotiation is to say, how do you want me to do something? How? So when I look at these things, I always remember Chris Voss's book and his examples in there and the things that he says. So when I see this woman talking about all of these rights and the right person for the right job, and like, how? How are you going to do that? Keep asking how. And you'll get to a point where eventually they'll go, oh, yeah, I don't really. So how do you want me to change? So she's out there making a complaint about some sort of laws that can't be changed. She can't affect change from a legal standpoint. She's not a legislator. She's a general in the Air Force that's responsible for human resources and getting
Space Force.
Right. Yeah, well, even more,
even worse,
just as important, right? It's a hugely important job.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, they're like 4 people in the Space Force.
But they get like $4 trillion a year.
Yeah.
going to the UFO programs.
Yep.
Well, when you look at it like, okay, cool, you've got this problem that you're facing with human resources. So how are you actually going to deal with that? Because making a speech about that on the public record, I promise you, is only damaging your career. And it's certainly damaging your credibility, because nothing that you say or do from a public perspective is going to affect any legislative change to help it be more agreeable to you. But she would say, I'm just making a point that all of these non-inclusive laws over here are causing problems for me over here, and I'm responsible for the country's security. So these laws are impacting on the country's security. Okay, cool. How are you going to solve that? What are you going to do about it? How are you fixing it? You know, what do you want me to do about it? I'm the legislator in your area, in your state there. What do you want me to do about it? My constituents want this, so that's why I've put it there. How you want me to change that now? Like, it's just all a moot point. And to your point, Ed, it's just woke rubbish, man. It's woke rubbish.
And I'll disagree a little bit in that I don't think it would hurt her career. I think one of the reasons why she's motivated to give the speech is to promote her career. It's Pride Month at the Pentagon.
You really think that that's it? You really think that that's going on?
What?
I don't know. I've just been in the military. I've just been on the...
all of her
I'm
bosses,
not a general, but...
The military leadership is woke. General Milley gave the same speech at a meeting inside of the Oval Office and in congressional testimony, saying how we need to become more woke. He's the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and the guy.
He's gone, man. He's gone. You don't have to worry about him anymore.
But that is the atmosphere. That's the norm now at the Pentagon. It has infested the top levels of the Pentagon. If you ask the average grunt or the average jarhead in average patrol, he's shaking his head and he can't believe this bullshit that's coming down from the leaders. But the leadership is infested. It's infected. These guys are more politicians than they are, military people anymore.
One of the things that is highlighted there is that what was the statistic? 77% of people that want to join can't join because they can't do the push-up test or whatever.
Yep.
And they try and relax those standards to make it more attractive to people. But then there's the young military age male that, the normal sort of person that's not drawn into any of that bullshit. They're not a video gamer. They go out, they play sport, they're physically active. This would be a good job for them. It would be attractive to them, and you get to play with all the toys, you get to be with your mates, you get to travel the world and do all these things. But the reality is, they look at it and go, "Why would I want to be part of that?"
Yeah, exactly.
You're turning those people off as well. You're dividing the potential. The pool of people that you can recruit from is so tiny. Now you're dividing it even more. Why would you do that?
Exactly. They are alienating the perfect person for those jobs. The typical guy who's the typical football star and athlete and has good grades. That kind of guy tends not to be a wacko. He tends to have traditional / conservative values.
He probably thinks it's cool to fly a fighter jet or drive a warship or tear around in a tank or something like that. He probably thinks that looks like an awesome idea. And then he looks at all these
and he's not
bullshit that he sees in the media like that.
That guy, he's not confused about his masculinity and his manhood.
That's the unspoken truth right there, isn't it? That alienating the potential pool that's the security risk. So that woman, there's the unspoken truth right there. We got to it, right? Well, my view is that she's saying that all of the state legislation and laws is damaging the security of the country. But you and I are arguing here that her behavior is what's actually damaging the security of the country, because you want to introduce divisive, woke stuff that has no place in that workplace. It's got nothing to do with anything in that workplace. And I did a video on that a little while ago saying that people like that just have forgotten where they came from. Because when you go to recruit school or to boot camp, the first thing that they do when you get there is shave your head. And the first thing that they do to the girls is pull their hair back in a ponytail exactly like this, because their hair is all the same. They give you a uniform, they take all your stuff away, so everybody is the same. It doesn't matter what color you are, what race you are, what religion you are, where you're from. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. Everybody is all the same. So inclusiveness has always been part of the military from Roman times. If you wanted to be a Roman soldier, they go, all right, go down there. Go start training. Get your spear, get your shield. Let's go. And nobody would care if you were not from Rome, so long as you spoke the language and you could follow the instructions and the orders. I'll have you.
And a lot of those guys were gay, by the way. Ancient Rome, they were big on they're actually very liberal in their
It
sexual
just didn't
policies.
matter.
It just didn't matter.
They were the best soldiers of the time.
Yeah, they didn't matter.
Anyway, it's a crazy time in history that we're living through. Ed, as we close out the show today, have you got any closing remarks for the week? We covered some ground this week, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. And I don't have anything particularly profound, except to say that the things that we are covering now, they're pretty diverse. We try not to stick to just one little area of the news out there. We cast a pretty wide net, and we like to go deep. There's one reason why we went from covering 4 stories in our down to 2. We wanted to have the luxury of giving all of our thoughts out on any particular issue, and we hope that's the kind of thing that rings true to the audience. We hope that you like the idea that it can be. We've never managed to break an hour in an episode. But that's we really enjoy doing this. But I know an hour and more is a lot to ask for the audience to sit through. But I'm hoping that maybe on your walk, maybe you'll incorporate us into your routine, incorporate us into your day, where you can have us in your ear and just take time to just marinate in Ed and Rob once in a while and take it all in. That's kind of our dream in life.
Well, that's beautifully said, and I appreciate all the feedback that we're getting. I got a couple of messages yesterday of people saying, "Well done, boys. We really like your content. It's really good. Keep it up." And really appreciate that. It's motivating. And thanks everyone for joining us on the live stream and bearing with us with the small technical issues that we've had here today. We don't normally suffer from those things. That's on me.
That's on me.
It's normally seamless, but well, look, we can't control the internet connection. It is what it is, and we'll just push through and just put it behind us and keep moving forward. I did have a bit of a profound thought. I was watching Tony Abbott, the ex-Prime Minister of Australia, talking about the voice to Parliament, and he said it is a categorical mistake to have a voice to Parliament, because what you're actually doing is saying that some people in Australia are more important than other people in Australia, and those people that are of Indigenous descent need to be treated differently in Australia to other people that are out there. And he said, fundamentally, we've never been able to close the gap on Indigenous affairs here in Australia, and we've had problems with that. But really what it comes down to is kids need to go to school, parents need to go to work, and we need to have safe communities. And we've built the schools, we've given them the job opportunities, and we've got the law and order where we need it. Sometimes that comes undone and falls apart, but we put it where we need it, and we solve those problems in real time as we do it. So having the voice to Parliament doesn't actually help, because citizens of Australia need to be all treated equally. And I thought that was a really profound statement that he made, and I wanted to, as the voice to Parliament hots up, the no vote seems to be getting more momentum, and the yes vote seems to be falling away, which can only be a good thing, because we don't need any more division here in our society. And creating artificial division and making some people more important than others is a categorical mistake that doesn't belong anywhere on planet Earth, least of all here in Australia. The people on the yes side are now saying what you need to do is to go out there and attack people saying no and call them racist. That's what they're saying. And I'm like, as soon as you do that, everybody will vote no.
Yeah. Look, that's the only argument these people have.
But that's the play that they've come out with, and it's, that's pretty profound for me as well. So I like it. So thank you, Paulie. Keep it scale, stupid. Really appreciate you following us and joining us here today on the show and sticking us right to the very end. All right, Ed, let's get out of here. Same bat time, same bat channel. But coming up on Monday, have a great weekend, everybody. And you have a great weekend too, Ed.
See you, Robbie.
Bye for now. See ya.